Welcome adventurers, so you want to create a cleric? Well, I'll try to do my best to explain everything about it as quickly as possible. The way I'm gonna create this character is first go over the class, then race, and finally background. But to be honest, I wouldn't prefer this way. Anyways, the first thing I'm gonna do is roll for stats. And from that I got 6, 11, 12, 10, 11 and 16. But before I put in the scores, the first thing you must know about the cleric class is that you can think of cleric like a preacher or a priest of modern days. He or she can be hypocritical and, well, go against his deity. But essentially, clerics get their powers from their deities. So doing that wouldn't make much sense anyways. The difference between clerics and paladins is really that clerics, as I said, were like more of a preacher or priest, while paladins are more of a religious police. More militaristic, and also they are sort of alignment restricted, while clerics are free to choose whatever alignment they want, as long as it goes well with their deity. So now that that's more or less clear, let's get into cleric's quick build guide. First, your wisdom should be the highest, followed by strength or constitution. Now wisdom is necessary for spellcasting, so that's why it must be the highest. Then strength and constitution because, well, it is a melee fighter most of the time. So highest score of 16 I'll put in my wisdom, 12 in my strength, 11 in my constitution and dexterity, 10 in my intelligence and 6 in my charisma, as it is most of the time the dumb stat. But before I write in all the modifiers for my scores and skills, I must choose a race. For this one I chose Wood Elf. In score increase I gain +2 on my dexterity and +1 on my wisdom. And so now that that's done, I can finally calculate all the modifiers and add all the modifiers to my skills. And once that's done, my initiative becomes my dexterity modifier, which is +1. Then my passive wisdom is 10 plus my wisdom modifier, which becomes 13. Then I can write in my proficiency bonus, which is +2. This bonus basically is added to any skill that you are proficient in, or to attack rolls with weapons that you are proficient with, and many other things. Alright, then let's move on to class features. The first thing we must write in is of course our hit points. On first level, cleric's hit points are equal to 8 plus constitution modifier, which in my case is 0. So 8 hit points it is. Hit die of course is 1d8, and then we come to proficiencies. Clerics are proficient with light armor, medium armor, shields and all simple weapons. Your saving throw proficiencies are in wisdom and charisma. And finally you get to choose 2 skills from history, insight, medicine, persuasion and religion. But those I will choose only after I chosen my background. And you know, just to make it interesting, I won't take the suggested accolade background from quick build. Now moving on, we have equipment. You have to choose either a mace or a warhammer if you're proficient with it. Then you have to choose scale mail or leather armor, or chainmail if you're proficient with it. Next you have to choose between light crossbow with 20 bolts or any simple weapon. And finally priest's pack or explorer's pack. And as the last thing you gain shield with a holy symbol. Now here's the thing with cleric. On first level you gain spellcasting ability. And you have to choose your divine domain. And there's the interesting part. Couple of these domains will give you proficiency with different things. For example, Tempest or War domains will give you proficiency with martial weapons and heavy armor, allowing you to choose that Warhammer and Chainmail. Mind you that these items come from suggested list. Of course, if you choose so, you can go and buy your equipment on your own, but for first time players I would not recommend that. And not to make things too complicated, I'll choose for my cleric a War domain, which will allow me to choose that Warhammer and Chainmail from equipment. Then after that I'll choose light crossbow with 20 bolts, so I have some range capabilities. And finally explorer's pack. Now, as the final thing we get from our class is spellcasting and divine domain. I'll explain spellcasting as the last one. So when it comes to divine domain, you really have to choose which path you will follow, really, what type of cleric you will be. And to be honest, there's quite a lot to choose from. I'll try not to go too much into detail so I can explain easily and quickly what each domain stands for, starting with knowledge domain. If you choose this archetype, you most likely will be the lore guy in your campaign, or even one-off. You'll be the one who will get the most information from a location or items or so on and so forth. Essentially, knowledge domain is not based on combat. Moving on, we have life domain. This domain basically deals with healing, and this is really the domain that makes Cleric the best healer in the game. Well, most of the time anyways. Next we have light domain. This domain, as its name implies, deals with light. Essentially, it makes your cleric into combat caster type of person, giving you spells that can damage enemy quite well. Then following that we have nature domain. Basically, it makes your character into a druid type of cleric, communing with nature and animals. Following that we have tempest domain. This essentially is much like light domain but with lightning. And with this domain you basically become like Thor. And coincidentally, next domain, the trickery domain, is based on Loki or other trickery gods. Essentially you gain skills to get things going your way or avoiding certain things. And so finally we have war domain. Again, as its name implies, it deals with war, with combat. And since I chose it, I might as well just read what I get on first level. So first I gain 2 spells that are prepared at all times, Divine Favor and Shield of Faith. Then I gain bonus proficiencies. At first level you gain proficiency with martial weapons and heavy armor. And finally, probably the most neat feature of this class, the War Priest feature. From first level your god delivers bolts of inspiration to you while you are engaged in battle. When you use attack action you can make one weapon attack as bonus action. You can use this feature number of times equal to your wisdom modifier, minimum of 1, and you regain all your expanded uses when you finish long rest. Alright, now that that's done, let's go to spellcasting. Your spell save DC, or basically the number that the enemy has to throw when you cast a spell that has this DC, is 8 plus your proficiency plus your wisdom modifier. For my character here it will be 13. Then you have spell attack modifier, which is your proficiency plus your wisdom modifier, which in my case is 5. You use this spell attack modifier when you have to throw your D20 to hit the target with the spell that has in its description written that you make a ranged or melee spell attack. Oh, and each day you can prepare spells equal to your wisdom modifier plus your cleric level. So in my case that would be 4. But here I have to stress it that spells you gain from your domain are always prepared, so they don't count. You can always cast them whenever you want or you have slots. Also on cleric table you can see how many cantrips and how many spell slots for each slot you have. On first level my cleric will know 3 cantrips and have 2 spell slots of first level. So essentially how spellcasting works is you have your spell slots and you have your prepared spells. Once you wish to cast a spell you have to expand 1 spell slot of the same level the spell is or higher. Even though my character will know 4 spells plus 2 ones from my divine domain, I will be able to cast only 2 level 1 spells. But when it comes to cantrips or 0 level spells you can cast them without limit. And when it comes to cleric, really, my recommendation on spell list is quite short. Sacred Flame is definitely a must-have because you are mostly a melee character, so you need something with range, and this cantrip is awesome at that. Then Spare Dying is quite often useful on first levels. Then as the first level spell, Cure Wounds is a pretty good heal, and Inflict Wounds is quite a good nuke, or simply damage dealing spell. So yeah, that's about it on Cleric. So let's move on to our Wood Elf description and write in all the features it gives us. The first thing our character actually is missing is a name, and for this I chose Varis. The reason for choosing this name is really that in Latvia this name is actually quite known, and to be honest I know a couple of people with this name, so that's kind of funny, at least to me. Alright, then moving on to racial traits. Ability score increase. Dexterity is increased by 2, which I already took in count. Then when it comes to alignment, elves lean towards the chaotic side more, and eventually I'll take that in count of course. Then your size is medium medium, and your walking speed is 30 feet. Then elves have dark vision, which allows them to see in dark as if it was dim light in 60 feet radius. After that you have keen senses feature, which basically gives you proficiency in perception skill. Following that you have Fey ancestry, which gives you advantage on saving throws against being charmed, and magic cannot put you to sleep. And finally you have the trance feature, which basically replaces your long rest with 4 hours of meditating, or as they call trance. Then we have languages. You can speak, read and write Common and Elvish. And finally you have to choose one of the sub-races. And as I said, I chose the Wood Elf. This Elvish sub-race will give me Wisdom ability score increase by 1, which I already took in count. Then I gain Elf Weapon Training, which gives me proficiency with long swords, short bow and long bow. Following that we have Fleet of Foot feature, which increases our walking speed to 35, which in fact is the fastest walking speed of all races. And finally we have Mask of Wild feature. You can attempt to hide even when you're lightly obscured by foliage, heavy rain, falling snow, mist and other natural phenomena. And so that's it on the race description. Let's move on to background. Oh, and before we do that, I got to mention that if you are playing Paladin or Cleric, you have to choose which deity you will be serving, because if you are doing something wrong by the standards of your deity, your DM can revoke your Paladin or Cleric status, or maybe grant you something good. Really depends on how you roleplay. And so it happened that my Wood Elf Cleric Varys chose to serve the Tempus god, the god of war. Mind you that your divine domain must be the same as your god's domain. Now back to background. In Cleric's quick build guide it was suggested that you take Acolyte background, but to be honest I want to make my character a little bit different. And for that I chose criminal background. Now explanation for this would be quite simple really. Let's say my character lived in poverty for a very long time and criminal life was really the only life he knew. Then one day for whatever reason he stumbled into Temple of Tempus and was greeted by kind priests that showed him the way, and so he decided to become a priest, and as it happened Tempus decided to bless him with his power, and so on and so forth. But what interests us is really the functional parts of this background. For skill proficiencies I gained deception and stealth, for tools I have one gambling set and thieves tools, and for equipment I gain a crowbar, a set of dark clothes including a hood, and a belt pouch containing 15 gold pieces. And then I have to choose my criminal speciality. I can roll the 8 or just simply choose on my own. I personally like the burglar the most because it would fit the narrative more. And finally we get a feature called criminal contact. You have reliable and trustworthy contact who acts as your liaison to a network of other criminals. You know how to get messages to and from your contact, even over great distances. Specifically, you know the local messengers, corrupt caravan masters and seedy sailors who can deliver messages for you. So this is more of a role-playing aspect more than anything else. Now, when it comes to personality traits and all the other stuff, I'll leave that open for you to fill in if you want to use this character. The only thing that I'll choose will be my alignment to be chaotic neutral. And so now that my background is chosen and all the things are written in, the only thing that's missing is skills from my class description. And so I have to choose 2 from history, insight, medicine, persuasion and religion. And I guess I'll choose insight and persuasion. And so that's about it on all the things about Cleric. I tried to be as quick as possible, so if you have any questions about any boxes you have to fill, be sure to check out the character creation series I made.